I am 82 years old. I didn't expect to still be here, and I didn't expect that the quiet would be this loud. Most mornings, I sit at the small kitchen table by the window and wait for the kettle to finish. I don't rush it. There's nowhere I need to be anymore. That's new. For most of my life, there was always somewhere I needed to be, and it was usually somewhere else. I'm not telling you this because I want sympathy. I'm telling you because at this age, there's nothing left to protect. The people I used to impress are gone. The titles don't matter now. What's left is memory, and memory doesn't flatter. I feel time differently now. It doesn't stretch out, it closes in. Days fold into each other, and the past feels closer than last week. I can see whole decades at once, like rooms I once lived in but never cleaned out. I used to believe my life would make sense later, that the choices would add up to something clear. They did add up, just not to what I assumed. When people ask what I did, I still answer out of habit. I tell them my career. I say it the way I've always said it, like it explains me. They nod politely. Sometimes they ask where I worked, sometimes they don't. Either way, the conversation moves on. It's strange how something that took so much of my life now fits into a sentence or two. I was proud of my work. I don't want to pretend I wasn't. I worked hard. I showed up. I did what was expected of me, and more. I was dependable. I was competent. I was often tired. In my 20s, I thought being busy meant being necessary. I liked the feeling of being needed. It gave me shape. It gave me an excuse. Back then, I didn't think in terms of cost. I thought in terms of momentum. You keep moving forward because that's what forward looks like. You don't stop to ask where it leads. I met my wife when we were both young enough to believe we had time. We talked about the future in general terms. We assumed it would unfold the way futures do in stories, not the way they actually do, one small decision at a time. She understood my ambition, at least she said she did, or maybe she just didn't argue with it at first. There's a difference, but you don't notice it until much later. Our life together was ordinary in all the ways that matter. We ate dinner together when we could. We talked about bills. We made plans that were always a little vague. I was often distracted. I told myself it was temporary. There was always a deadline coming up, always a project that needed just a bit more attention. I'd say things like, after this quarter, or once things settle down. Things never settled down. I just got used to the noise. When our children were small, I told myself they wouldn't remember that I wasn't always there. I told myself I was providing for them. That counted for something. It did count, but it wasn't the same currency. I missed school events because of meetings that no one remembers now. I came home late with apologies that sounded rehearsed even to me. I listened with half an ear while checking my watch. There were moments I felt a flicker of unease, sitting in traffic, wondering why my chest felt tight, standing in a hotel room that looked like every other hotel room I'd been in. Those thoughts passed quickly. I didn't invite them to stay. My wife learned not to wait up. That happened quietly. No argument, just a shift. Dinner wrapped in foil, notes left on the counter instead of conversations. We didn't fight much. I used to think that meant we were doing well. Now I understand it meant we were both avoiding something. I told myself I was doing this for us. I said it enough times that it felt true. It was easier than asking whether we needed quite so much. As the years went on, the promotions came, so did the responsibilities. Each step felt justified by the one before it. Turning back seemed irresponsible. Who walks away from a stable life? Who risks that? I became someone people relied on. At work, that was considered a virtue. At home, it was less visible. The children grew up while I was busy being dependable. I know their lives in outline. I know the big facts. I don't know the small ones as well as I should. I remember realizing one day that they didn't call me first when something happened. They called their mother. It made sense. She was the one who knew where things were kept. She was the one who noticed. I noticed outcomes. She noticed days. By the time I reached my 40s, the pace had become normal. I didn't question it. I had built a life that required me to maintain it. That felt like success at the time. My wife grew quieter, not unhappy exactly, just more contained. We spoke about logistics more than feelings. It seemed practical. When she asked me to take a weekend off once, just the two of us, I said I couldn't. I remember the look on her face. It wasn't anger. It was something like resignation. I didn't understand it then. I thought love was something you carried with you, regardless of how often you showed it. I was wrong about that. The years continued, my hair thinned, my parents aged and died. I gave eulogies where I talked about responsibility and example. I meant it. I told myself I'd slow down soon. I didn't specify when. Soon is a convenient word. The first real crack came when my wife got sick. Not suddenly, gradually. The kind of illness that asks for patience, not heroics. I tried to adjust. I did what needed to be done. I went to appointments when I could. I made phone calls. I still worked. She needed presence more than efficiency. I didn't understand the difference right away. One evening, sitting in the hospital room, she asked me why I always seemed somewhere else, even when I was right there. I didn't have an answer. I tried to make one, but it sounded thin. She died 2 years later. I was holding her hand. That's something I'm grateful for. It doesn't erase the rest. After the funeral, people told me how strong I was. I accepted their words because there was nothing else to say. Strength wasn't what I felt. I felt late. The house was too quiet. The routines we'd built around absence collapsed without her. I realized how much she had been holding together without comment. I retired not long after that. It made sense on paper. The timing was right. I had earned it. Retirement is strange when your identity has been built around not being home. The days stretched out in front of me, empty and unstructured. I didn't know what to do with them. The phone didn't ring as much as I expected. Work moved on. Of course it did. I knew it, logically, that it would. Knowing it and feeling it are different things. I reached out to old colleagues. The conversations were polite, brief. We had shared a context, not a bond. Once the context disappeared, so did most of the connection. My children visited when they could. They were busy. I recognized that tone. It sounded familiar. I don't blame them. They built their lives the way they saw modeled. That's something else I carry. There are things now that can't be revisited, conversations that won't happen, ordinary days that would have mattered if I'd been paying attention. I sometimes think about the person I was when I was younger. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't careless. He just assumed time was abundant. He assumed attention could be deferred. Regret doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in. It shows up when you reach for someone who isn't there, when you realize you don't know who to call. There are achievements I'm proud of, but they don't keep me company. They don't sit across from me at the table. They don't remember how I take my tea. I used to imagine I'd be remembered more clearly, that my absence would be noticed. I don't think that was arrogance. I think it was misunderstanding. Most lives don't leave a large outline. They leave impressions on a few people, if you're lucky. I made fewer of those than I could have. If you're listening to this, I'm not trying to warn you. I don't know your life. I only know mine.
I wish I had understood that presence isn't something you make up for later. It's not stored somewhere. It happens or it doesn't. I wish I had known that being indispensable at work doesn't translate to being irreplaceable at home. I learned that too late. I still have moments of gratitude. I don't want to deny that. I had opportunities. I was healthy for a long time. I loved and was loved, even imperfectly. But I also carry the knowledge of what didn't happen because I was busy with things that no longer exist. At 82, the future is short. I don't say that with drama. It's just accurate. I live within that knowledge now. I spend time remembering. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's gentle. Mostly, it's quiet. I talk to my wife in my